Yes, there are a lot of DEI trainings that are incredibly performative, meaning that they are just put on for a show and there's really no substance behind it. However, there are so many hardworking DEI practitioners or people within organizations, higher education, healthcare, tech, K through 12 systems, whatever the case may be, who have DEI values, diversity being like in simplistic form, seeing the beauty of humans being diverse and wanting to see that diversity represented in all levels of an organization and in their products and in their services. Again, with respect and with dignity for that diversity, not a performative, oh, let's put a black person on, our hiring page, or, oh, let's put a hijabi on our marketing for this product or whatever. Like, yes, that's going to be problematic if that's the only things that they're doing and they're not being like inclusive of these people within their organization and their customers and clients. Then with inclusion, there's the idea of people really truly being welcomed and genuinely wanted and their voices being heard. They can express a different opinion and they're going to be respected, and they're not just like, shut up, just be happy that you have a seat at the table but don't say anything. And then with equity, the idea being is that we are recognizing that the playing field is not even and we have different advantages and disadvantages. That means that some people might need more assistance or more accommodations, but that is because looking at the systems of the world that we're in, they have very serious disadvantages. That means that they need more support. There's a really great picture that I use in my DEI trainings where there's like 4 people and they have different bicycles and the people are different sizes. There's a child, there's a really tall person, there's like a medium, person, and then there's like someone in a wheelchair, and we've given them all the same bicycle, which of course would be inequitable. It would be equal because equally they got the exact same resource. However, they did not get equitable treatment, which means a recognition that these people are inherently different people and they have different needs, and that is totally understandable and expected. And so they need to be treated quote unquote differently, which might not be equal, but it is equitable, right? So that's like very short what DEI stands for. So whether you yourself or someone you know in your organization has the title with DEI, or there's like other acronyms as well, you can say diversity and inclusion, you can have just inclusion, you can have just diversity. Sometimes there's diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Sometimes there's JEDI, which is justice, equity, diversity, include. Like there's all kinds of like different acronyms. I just like the one DEI for simplicity. Like there's other reasons, but put it in the comments if you want to see a full explanation of why I use DEI and not the other ones, but we'll see. The idea being is that you have people in your organization who hopefully are DEI managers, or there's a head of DEI in your organization, maybe like on a VP level or in the C-suite, something like that. Yes, there are those roles, but then there are also people who have the values of what I just described, diversity, equity, and inclusion being, and they truly do believe in that, in people being treated with respect for who they are and not having to shed who they are at the door and being forced to assimilate to dominant cultures, which we should know mean like white, male, Christian, or secular, or might be coded as Christian, able-bodied, all these other privileged identities. Anyone who has anything other than that, we need to assimilate in or pretend as much as humanly possible, hide who we are. For Muslim women, for instance, like just using myself as an example, it's not to always talk about hijab when we talk about Muslims, but I wear hijab. It's like a very obvious answer to talk about, right? Like, could you imagine having me in the workplace, and in the workplaces I have been in person, thankfully, alhamdulillah, I've worked at very kind, good organizations when I did go in person that never had any issue with my hijab. But again, I also live in a pretty like liberal area. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is far from perfect, but definitely a lot better than other parts of the country and of the world by far. I've never had anyone, have an issue with my hijab, or, they didn't want to have me shown to customers or clients, right, working at a front-facing job. However, there might be instances very much so like where people just pretend that they don't see this giant colorful piece of fabric on my head or other hijabis' heads. Like, That would be so absurd. The same thing I imagine also for Sikhs who wear a turban, right? And especially a lot of them wear very colorful turbans, which are so beautiful. Could you imagine looking at someone dead in the eye and like working with them day to day and you're just going to pretend that you don't see that? So the idea being like for those of us who are very visibly different, of course, also something that's really good news in the world of DEI is that the Crown Act passed in Texas, I think like today or yesterday, actually, it's like really hot off the presses, which is a law that protects Black folks. I don't know if it's Black women specifically. I imagine it's Black folks in general, where the hair literally growing out of their head, literally just growing out of their head naturally, cannot result in them being fired or discriminated against. They can wear their protective hairstyles that are coming naturally to coily based textured hair, instead of forcing them to use relaxers and really harsh chemicals, which we've now also seen studies come out that show if you use these kinds of chemicals on your hair multiple times a year, that you are going to be significantly more likely to get some kind of cancer, which is a huge, huge problem. So you can see how these kinds of policies have very real, substantial impacts on people's lives. All of that is to say, yes, some DI trainings, some DI programming, sometimes having a VP, a head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at an organization is performative. However, there are so many people, whether they have DEI in their employment title or not, who truly believe in these values. And I personally believe, I'm on the younger end of millennials. I've seen statistics both about millennials and about Gen Z, that our generation so strongly value inclusion and respect for other people that as we continue, I mean, millennials are all like well into the workforce by now, but as Gen Z also take up a bigger and bigger portion of the workforce, that it really is only a matter of time before we are running the ships and pulling in DEI, whether we call it DEI or not, into the future of work permanently.